Hi, welcome to class. On this lecture, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit more about what intercultural communication is, what it is that we're referring to when we say that, and also give you a framework of values that many intercultural communication scholars use to help define some of the differences between cultures. So let me just tell you a story. We were in the south of France on the French Riviera this last year, and there was a group of us. And so, one of the best things, of course, about traveling is the ice cream and the gelato. And so, we had just all gotten gelato, and we saw that there was a sightseeing of this little cute red train that went all around the town, and it went up on the cliff and all that kind of thing. And so we decided that we were all going to pay the $10 that it was going to cost to go on the little train around the town. So, of course, I just had my gelato and the train was going to leave in like 5 minutes. So, I had my gelato in one hand and I was talking to this lady to figure out where this train went and to get tickets to go on this little tour thing. So I go up there and I speak a little bit of French, very little bit of French, but I said in French, basically, we would like tickets for the train. And she looked at me and she said, it is very rude to be talking to me with food in your hand. And I said, excuse me. She said that in English, of course. And see, I thought it was pretty cool that I was actually speaking French to her. And so I'm like, excuse me? She said, don't talk to me with your mouth full. And okay. And so at that moment in time, I had my little ice cream in my hand and I felt stupid and I felt mad that she was telling me how to act. I mean, shoot, like I'm a middle-aged woman, I know how to act. And she was berating me, and I just wanted the stupid tickets and I just wanted to finish my ice cream. And I I don't know, all these things were going through my mind, and eventually, she gave me the tickets. But until I apologized to her, she wouldn't even talk to me. And she was gonna like have someone else. She was gonna help somebody else, and we were gonna miss this little train because she wouldn't talk to me because I had an ice cream cone in my hand. Anyway, perfect example of miscommunication. She was mad at me. I was ticked off at her. Um, but yet she wanted to make money off of me to sell me the ticket. I wanted to get the ticket to go on the ride. But yet, because of these differences in intercultural communication and in values and what's right and what's wrong, we just didn't connect well. And I left that whole situation feeling like an idiot and feeling like I hated all French people. And I'm sure she left that conversation feeling like stupid Americans. Why can't they act like they're supposed to act with and be polite and have certain kinds of polite behaviors? Don't they know how to act? Uh, Intercultural communication. It's tricky. It's tricky to communicate with one another just anyway, but you put on top of that cultural values that are different and understandings that people just take for granted, but when they're different, communication breaks down. So what I'd like to do is to begin by talking about communication. There's lots of communication models out there, but let me just share with you this particular one. I think it works. You begin with the communicator. Okay, in any kind of communication situation. If I'm the communicator, basically what I have this idea in my head, and I want to get that idea over to your head, right? So what I will do is I'll take this information and I'll figure out how to put it into words or pictures or somehow get it across to you. So what I'm doing is I'm encoding the information, this idea that I want to get over to you. So I encode it, I put it into words or pictures or whatever. I figure out what channel I'm going to send it to you, whether it be talking to you face to face or sending you a text message or, I don't know, sending you a picture or whatever. you get it. You get that. Let's say you get that that Instagram and or that Snapchat. It's like okay, you got to figure out what it means, right? You have to figure out uh is this like snarky? Are they being funny? Is this are they mad at me? Um do they respect me? What's going on? So you have to take the information and decode it. What does this mean for you? What does this mean that you sent this information? What does this mean when you're standing there talking to me with an ice cream cone dripping down your hand? Um, so there's encoding. You send the message through whatever channel you want, whichever channel you choose, and then the second decodes it. And then it's not just like that linear sort of thing, because as you know, things are happening all the time. As for instance, as the woman is watching me talk to her with gelato dripping down my hand, she is sending me plenty of feedback that's not even in words, just like the look on her face, and I'm all of a sudden I'm decoding the look on her face, like, oh my gosh, something is wrong here. She's ticked off. Oh, there's the train. It's going to leave pretty soon. All of those kinds of things, right? So this is kind of the basic model of communication. Now, unfortunately, there's lots of places that just any kind of communication can break down, right? There's lots of noise that hits us. So maybe I didn't hear the person when they talk to me. There's other noise. There's like psychological noise. Like for me, the fact that the train was going to leave, the little red train was going to leave in 5 minutes and we were going to miss it. I was like really tense and a little bit short. Right, because this noise impacted me, this psychological noise. There's other psychological noise. There was the fact that I was on vacation and I don't like anybody raining on my vacation parade, right? And the fact that she was a woman and I was a woman, I was older than her, all of those kinds of things. That kind of noise, that psychological kind of um, preconception of how this was supposed to work was at play there. All right, so that is sort of the normal transactional model of communication. Now, you put into that these cultural norms, some of which I did not understand. Some of the stereotypes that I have of the French, some of the stereotypes that she had of Americans was definitely coloring the kind of information that comes in. And that's where we get into this model that was in this reading. If each of these main shapes are a different culture, like there's a square culture, let's say that's an American culture, and I'm inside that American culture, but there's not like anyone that's like a true American, we're made up of a lot of different kinds of culture, so I'm not exactly square. And then I talk to her, and as I talk, you can see how the message really transforms. So basically, this is just a very simplified version of how the message gets really filtered through all of these cultural ideas, you know, the norms of how you're supposed to act, and if I do or I don't act with those norms, I might not even know what they are. That impacts how I encode and decode the information. And there you've got intercultural communication. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do was introduce you to Hofstede. Now, there's a number of theorists, intercultural communication theorists, who over the years have tried to figure out, okay, how do cultures differ from each other? And I just noticed this particular slide, they misspelled cultural. That's really bad. Anyway, so Hofstede is probably the person who came up with this framework for cultures can vary in these 6 different dimensions. Now, certainly there's lots of other dimensions that are out there. Lots of other theorists have different frameworks. But this one has been researched probably more than any other one that I know of. In fact, one of the assignments in this unit is for you to go into, there's an organization that does research into each of these dimensions. And it'll give you information on lots of different countries and cultural things that where they, according to research and surveys, where each of these cultures sort of fleshes out on each of these dimensions. So let me quickly go through each one, because this could potentially be a really helpful place for you to begin. Uh, it's a helpful framework for you to begin looking at how your culture differs from the culture that you will be interacting with. All right, so the first one, individualistic versus collectivistic. You've probably heard a lot about this. I think it's a little bit harder to see in real life, but this is really one of those foundational differences that we see in cultures. So for instance, my colleague gives the example of a snowblower. Okay, so like think about how often you use a snowblower. Uh, and chances are, no, let's not do a snowblower. Let's do a lawnmower. Okay, so you use a lawnmower maybe once every week, once every other week. All right, it's not that much. Other than that, the lawnmower sits in the garage, right? Well, it would kind of make sense if people in your neighborhood all shared the same lawnmower, right? Because then you could each, oh, it would save so much money, and you could each like you use the lawnmower one day of the week, and you'd all have really good looking grass. And wouldn't that make sense, right? But I don't know. In the US, I know in my neighborhood, there's no way I would share a lawnmower with my neighbors, because A, can I really trust them with my lawnmower? And I like to have control over my own stuff. Well, part of this really gets down to this value of individualistic versus collectivistic. We tend to be very highly individualistic in this culture. And the idea of sharing things, of waiting for the group, of being part of a group, and making your decisions to make the group happy versus making decisions that are best for you. Those kinds of cultural values can be very different, and can, especially in a work environment, can lead to some real difficult challenges. Masculine and feminine dimensions. A masculine society is going to be one that tends to be more hierarchical. It's going to be one that's maybe a little more aggressive, a little more direct, competitive. A feminine society is going to be one probably that is more caring, more supportive, more places higher value on relationships versus on competition and connection, those kinds of things. Uncertainty avoidance would be how comfortable you are with change, right? How comfortable are you, like, with adventure, and like, let's go try this, and let's go like start a new business. Wow, yeah, that'd be great idea. Or you know, we stick with what we know, what we've had for this is the traditional way of doing it, and this is the way it's going to be done in the future. So how comfortable are people in the culture with uncertainty and with change? The fourth one has to do with power distance. So in other words, the degree to which people are comfortable with influencing upwards, and hierarchy. So for instance, I was raised in a way that I get, I don't feel comfortable with like being myself and just being like, hey, how you doing, with people who have a high status compared to my status. So for instance, whenever I talk to Jay Barnes, or whenever we're together at different functions, I he's sweet and nice, and he talks to me like I'm a colleague, but I can hardly say anything. I come across like such an idiot, because um, he's my boss, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I have a lot of respect for him, and I just I don't know, it's like it's a difficult kind of social situation for me because I feel comfortable with a larger power distance. Now, some people feel comfortable with a small power distance. Those would be the people who like come up to me, students come up to me in the hallway and are like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And like we're buds, and they'll complain to me about the class, about me, about whatever. Um, that what that means is the power distance between me, a higher status faculty person, and a student is fairly small. And at Bethel, that's really a cultural value, is that teachers and students tend to have low power distance, and a friendship between um, teachers and students that's like a cool thing. That is not the case in a lot of places around the world, especially when it comes to bosses and employees and teachers and students and some of those kinds of things. The next one has to do with time perspective. So time perspective, if you've traveled any place like South America, Mexico, Duluth, time is different. Okay, so what does on time mean? For a lot of people around here, time means if you're 5 minutes early, you're late, right? I traveled with someone from the business department a few years ago, and when he says we're leaving at 2:30, we leave at 2:30, and it doesn't matter if everybody's there or not, because if it's 2:31 and you show up, everybody's gone, right? But other cultures are like, there's you need to just kind of relax and enjoy yourself. And if you are in the middle of a conversation, that's more important than getting someplace on time. So, what does on time mean? Time perspective also means it has to do with how much you value traditions, right? How much value do you put in the past and what happened in the past? I know in American culture, at least in my growing up, I'm very goal oriented, right? And when I don't have a goal, I'm feeling like there's a problem here because I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be shooting for or going for. And I think sometimes when students graduate from college or are getting ready to graduate, and if you don't know what kind of job you're going to have, it's like really freaked out because we tend to be a very future oriented culture. So, there's plenty of places like you don't know what you're going to be doing for your job next year. Well, okay, but that's not as important as keeping the strong traditions in place that people in the past that we've been part of, our family, the way that our business has done things, those kinds of things. So cultures put a different emphasis on future versus present, like being here right now, like sitting here talking to you, having this interaction is so important. So don't worry about who else is trying to get a hold of you. Don't worry about what time you have to be to your next appointment. Enjoy this time that we have together, right? That's time perspective. And then indulgence or restraint, there's other ways of talking about this, but basically it's like, what are the rules? How important are rules to you? For instance, if you've ever traveled in Switzerland, I'll tell you what, they've got rules there and you don't mess around, right? So you don't jaywalk in Switzerland because you will get a ticket. You are, I've talked to people who live there, and it's like you can't paint your house without getting previous like permission to do it. You can't. There's so many things you can't do. You have to have all of the right um, um, certifications and all the. I mean, rules are there for a reason, and you follow the rules. You get to places like Italy or Greece or Spain, and it's like, you know what? Rules are good, but there's more important things in life than following the rules, which, is probably one of the reasons in Greece a lot of people don't pay taxes because, it doesn't fit in with the choices that they've made. Um, so, how important are rules and following the rules to the society? All right, so there you've got Hofstede has 6 cultural dimensions. On the website that you're going to go to for the next assignment, there's a lot more explanation of each of these dimensions, and you can see where the US fits on these and where the culture that you're going to be interacting with will be. Basically, intercultural communication is tricky. There are so many different kinds of things that can impact how successful you are, what you see, how you understand it, how you interpret things, and what kind of connection you can build with people who are from a different culture. It's tricky. Cultures are different from one another, and it's important to at least be able to step back and to ask yourself, how is this other person's culture impacting how they're seeing me and how they're behaving? And that's what I've got for intercultural communication and values.